And then how do you drain it? Just before you answer that, I want to say that I really enjoyed your talk on talk. But in my view, I think until we Nigerian architects and maybe African architects start doing what Nollywood has done, until we start telling our stories the way we know how, in our own local languages. And that's what Hoffman and Hoffman started doing. But I still see some foreign things, which I think maybe with time we'll get there. But we in Nigeria, we've not embraced our Nigerianness so much. I don't know whether we are timid, whether we are shy. I don't know what it is. Colonial mentality, yes, maybe. So until we do that, we're not going to go far, because we keep competing with glass that is not ours, whether you like it or not. Glass is not African. Glass is not African. Wood is African. There's something, maybe until we do the research and get to the point where we see something glassy in wood. I don't know. But I think what your talk has done is to stimulate something in me, and I'm hoping in every other architect here, that we need to start digging deep to find that Nigerianness in our designs.
Soil from, I don't know, America, Europe, and whatsoever, and we were like, that's not the sense of the whole thing, that cannot happen. But it is us to take the time and do the research during construction to make sure that we find local people, landscape people, and try to really get the materials from Ghana. We got to the stage that the project manager was ready to cancel it. So, I mean, it was a lot of effort from our side to make it happen, and I can confirm that it's real grass, and the soil is from Ghana. It's simple, it's built up in different levels, and there's a drainage system underneath. So it's not rocket science, it's a basic principle. We are happy to share the details with you if someone's interested.
Thank you.
So, right, I think we'll go to Mr. Bisi Alastilo in terms of your question. You want to, it's just a one-sentence statement, okay? Can we step down local for homegrown? Homegrown industries. Okay, right. I think it's a big point. I'm sorry, but this is my own. China, and we obviously, which is not sustainable. These are the areas I feel that we need to focus on in terms of looking at our infrastructure to bring back factories, because without electricity, without transportation, without water, without other complementary accessories that you need for a factory to work, it's a big challenge for local factories. And that's why some people have braved the trail. And I'm very impressed with one of the companies that prepared it, because I work with them, Lucky Fibers. They do all the carpets we have in this country now, majority of the good carpets are produced by Lucky Fibers. You are even able to give them details to what you want to do. But they come to me today, I'm going to shut down my factory because I have to do a job for so and so. You have to, if you can do your job now, because they are the only one. I mean, they give me their time limits instead of me giving them my own time limits. So what are we talking about? So we need to please find a way how we're going to get the governments that are going to put in infrastructure and support the local industry to have the industries to grow. That's my contribution in terms of the fact that majority of the industries we've grown with, which we know very well, some of our younger architects don't even know they ever existed. We have imbibed from Europe. Now we are even in China. China has taken over the country. I mean, it's so unfortunate. And a little push, I think the government and ourselves need to encourage that local production, as well as using the local materials, so that because they are sustainable. They are things that are found in our environment, and they are reusable, and as well, they grow within our environment. So we need to start working in that line. And I'm very impressed with what Udman has done, and few architects still are doing it in the country, and which we need to support. So I think we have a direction which we must just try and focus on to make sure it works. That's it. We lost a lot of focus. There is no doubt about it. We need to change. There's a change management that needs to happen within all the architects to ensure that we don't move on to the same first world. We have our own world. It's going to be better than first.
Yeah. Thank you. As the MC, I get preference, particularly because it starts to address this idea or the notion of what it means to identify a building. And I think that's quite important. You know, what does it really mean to be an African building? And you've shown it in terms of your materiality and pushing for sustainability, which actually comes across in a lot of vernacular work. Now, in relation to Morenike's presentation, where she also talked about indirectly this idea of identity and how identity, it goes so far. There's no right or wrong answer. So it can be dangerous to say that we have an identity crisis. We have an identity. It might not be what people think it should be, but we do have one.
I'm also not saying that we should homogenize ourselves, and I'm definitely not saying we should turn into Wakanda. Definitely not saying that. What I used Wakanda for as an example, and it would be impossible to pedestrianize like the entire Lagos. No, I just pointed that out because I've had this frustration walking around in the hotel the entire time. What I found fascinating about Wakanda is exactly what you just said. The fact that it's pluralistic in style, in recognition of just the diversity in how people are thinking about themselves. So Wakanda, when you really look at the images that are in there, you have multiple scales of urbanism, human level, middle, skyscrapers. You have all sorts of shapes, pyramids and domes and things that are reminiscent of colonial era and slavery. And yes, the Yoruba people that ran away from Brazil came back here in the 1800s and then infiltrated our own architecture here. And what is interesting, I think, about Nigeria, the more I read about it, is just how we go from our traditional historical styles, and then you have Brazilian influence and the Muslim influence from Sudan, and you have British influence as well. And all of this comes into play into what is identity. And then it starts to move into this era of vernacular architectural style, but then you have so many international influences in that what I'm just saying is that in a typical day, for the average Nigerian, it is very hard to find yourself. Whatever that self ends up being, it is very difficult. I mean, Lagos Island might have rich history in a lot of these buildings, but for the typical person wandering around Ikeja or maybe Surulere or the average person in Obalende Market, there aren't, I'm saying, a lot of built structures around us to point us in a direction to say you are a great people. And my question is that, what is it that would help us get there, that recognizes our influences in colonization, recognizes influences from all over the world, and helps us build that? I just think that the need for that cohesion can be found in our buildings, that this need for a sense of belonging can be built somehow, and it's not going to be an easy answer for everything you just said. There are historical reasons for why we're where we are. And when I say identity, I'm not saying it in a trivial, simplistic, reductionist sense of we should become Wakanda and we should all like have the same way of seeing ourselves. I'm saying our architecture should reflect this question you just posed, and should reflect it in a way that challenges us to be greater. And I'm currently struggling to see that around me. I hope I'm making sense. And I completely agree with everything you said.
That was a very interesting question. I think you answered yourself.
Yeah.
through your question, who decides what identity is? You said everything that makes us. We are the kingdoms that came before us. We are the slavery that we went through. We are the colonialism that we went through. Everything that has made us who we are today has influenced our progress till now. Is who we are. But so what Nigerian identity is what it is what it is now. And we can't say that Nigerian, because you're designing a building with Nigerian identity, it's supposed to be in this material. But you as a Nigerian, you exist within an environment. That environment has a climate. And there are materials that work in that climate. All these cement block buildings that we are building, they are heat traps. They do not provide the comfort level that the building occupants need. So we, as architects, we need to be sensitive to that. So it's the materials that respond to your climate. That is your identity. That is taking cognizance of what is happening around you, where we are now and what we need. Because if you build something for someone and he's paying hundreds and hundreds of naira because your building is not efficient, he has to cool it every single day. It doesn't allow light in. Somebody said glass is not African. I don't totally agree. A glass box is not, to me, is not an African building because of the climate. You are basically, you built a greenhouse. You know, in winter time, if you make a glass block, you can grow tropical plants because the glass takes the heat, increases it, and puts it into the box. So if you make a glass box in this environment, that is not your identity. You've copied a temporary design and you've dropped it here. It doesn't work here. So if we can use glass, but we have to make it ours. We have to recognize, we have the sun, we have to shade the glass.
When I first came back, I was looking at the same thing for identity. Let it be like the engraving on the calabash and all that, yeah? However, the senior architect, to me, Femi Williams, yeah, told me that, look, the way we handle buildings here is very, very different. And in studying that for many years, you will find that our buildings respond to climate. You can't do a building here that is hot, the client will take it. You can't do a building here that has small rooms. In England, the buildings have very, very tiny rooms, you know. So the kind of responses we've been doing, our architects know what they're doing. Because we're not making it look like a science fiction thing. I'm a film designer. I used to work doing scenes like Wakanda. Because we're not doing, you know, this is real architecture. You know, it has to work. It has to deliver. I just want to say that. Thank you very much.
What I learned back in college, and from what I've seen, Nigerian architecture, let me put it that way, or African architecture, is unique and different. See, people or families, they group their rooms around the courtyard. It's basic. And at night or in the evening, having come back from the various farms or whatever they do, they gather in the courtyard to tell what we call folk tales. Thank you very much. Moonlight stories. That's the way Nigerians used to build their homes or houses. And when you come into the house, there is what we call an anteroom. If you're not used to that home or to that family, you stay in the anteroom. You don't go beyond that point. And your dining room is not part of your living room. It's wrong, traditionally. It's not everybody who comes to your house you want to ask to come out and eat with you. And my mother used to say, it's in your own house that you eat the mouse in your house. So all this idea of living dining, all that kind of thing, it's alien to our culture. I'll take you back a few years when I just started practicing. Some years ago. The client came to the office and I advised him, we're going to separate your dining room from your living room. He said, no, I want a large open space and blah, blah, blah. 2 days later, I met him at the door to the office. What's the matter? He said, that thing you said, you should do it that way. That he was just sitting at the table and his most valuable client came to the house. He could not sit to eat while the guy was waiting. And you see, that's why you want to keep tradition, maintain it, but what you need to do is make what the design you do very, very functional. That is the essence of architecture. You separate the bedroom areas from the living areas. That's what our forefathers used to do. And there must be cross ventilation, because all this idea of having just one opening into a living room or a bedroom doesn't work. There must be cross ventilation. That's what everybody that enjoys what do you call it, air conditioning. Every room in the house should necessarily have cross ventilation. And I mean, not to take much of your time, those are the basic elements of African architecture.
Very dialectical submission. I appreciate particularly your provoking architects to consider so much of psychology, so much of the environment, so much of architecture is situated. It's in a place. So when architecture begins to think of something global, then you are importing what is foreign. So I like to move from there to Ordner and Ordner. Ordner begins to look locally in the immediate environment, taking the best from that environment to develop the architecture that is meant for that community. Because you're not going to import people into that place. So in whichever way we consider our architecture, it is cultural. So there's nothing like a Nigerian architecture. Of course there's a Yoruba architecture, there's an Igbo architecture, because it evolved from the people. It evolved from their cosmogony, their cosmology, how they grew up as a people, their beliefs, their belief systems. So if you take this away, you are taking away their psychology, you are taking away their philosophy of life. So architecture is basically cultural. There can never, and that's my own belief, be a Nigerian architecture. Nigeria is a forced union. Nigeria is a forced union, but you can have a Yoruba architecture that architect Oduwole just mentioned. It is based on the courtyard principle. It's based on total cross ventilation. It's a reaction to the elements. So in whichever way you look at it, the Yoruba can say they have evolved an architecture that is local and at the same time global. Thank you so much.
Thank you, because I have to close this because the sessions, we have to start the afternoon session. I think it's been very interactive and very nice. Really appreciate all our speakers, Odna, Ola Oshibikon, and the various product presenters. We do appreciate you, and we want you to come back next year to support LAF. Then we'll be talking of 10.0. We're going to this, the double digit. So we expect that you're going to contribute and help us continue this forum. For us now, we have to take a break because the afternoon session needs to start because we have the closing ceremony coming up again. So it's quite a busy day which we have to fast track. I know that this topic would have been better well exhausted if we have the time, but please pardon us. I believe that we'll have other forums that we can take each one of ourselves and talk about it. Thank you all for giving us the opportunity to serve you. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick information. We're moving straight into the afternoon session. Because of time, the closing ceremony is going to be after this session that we're going into. For purpose of information, the center aisle here will be for